Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. My name is Bryce. I'll be your host. First things first, let's talk about the sponsor of our show today, which is Lender. Lender is a software tool for private and hard money lenders. It's a loan origination and servicing tool. So if you're a hard money lender, private money lender, you need a better tool than Excel to track all of your loans, your borrowers, your investors, etc. Lender is the perfect tool for you. So check out Join Lender, Lendr, joinlender.com to check out that tool. Today, we're talking about a metric that a lot of people don't talk about that I think they should talk about more. So in the real estate world, everybody talks about ROI. You know, everybody wants a return on their investment, right? Which makes sense. You put some money in, you want to get some money out. That's the fundamentals of investing. I totally get that. The thing that a lot of people don't talk about is ROE, which is return on equity. Everybody knows fundamentally that the basics of rentals are so great because you have tenants that are paying down your mortgage every month, right? So of course, when you make a mortgage payment, there's a certain portion of it that goes to interest. There's also a portion of it that goes to principal. And so your mortgage balance over time, of course, it drops. Now, the thing with that though, is everyone's like, great, this is like a forced savings account. So when I go to sell that property, I'll get this big paycheck from what my tenants have paid off, which is true. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that over time, that rental in a way gets less profitable because your return on equity goes down. Because if you have a rental property, for example, and you have 10% equity and it's making you $500 a month net. If you take that $500 and you divide it by the $10,000 in equity, that's actually a very good property because you're highly leveraged. You're making a lot of money based off the amount of equity that you have in it. Now, let's say you've had a property for 20, 25 years. You're still making $500 a month net, but you've got $150,000 in equity. The return on your equity is incredibly low because you have this large chunk of cash that's sitting there not doing anything undeployed. I think as a hard money lender, this was like something that came to me that really encouraged me to sell all of my rentals. Ultimately, what I did was I looked at all the equity that we had in all of these properties, and I thought to myself, okay, we're making this much in free cash flow, but what could I make as a hard money lender if I were to lend that out? And of course, everyone says, well, you know, it's not the same because it's taxed at ordinary income and you don't get the depreciation and, you know, there's all these different things. But I don't know, call me crazy, but I kind of think that depreciation is over glamorized maybe. I mean, it's great because you get to quote unquote write stuff off. The IRS does not let you just write things off. Like there's some point in time where you have to pay for that. And so, you get to defer it, but you still have to pay that in the long run. It's not like the IRS is just letting you get off scot-free. So do I care about depreciation? Honestly, no, I really don't. Because I care more about the here and now and what we're doing to make money now. I think people need to put more emphasis on their ROE instead of ROI, simply because it's another metric to look at to track your profitability. So kind of coming full circle here, that's similar to our episode that we had last week, talking about why we decided to become a hard money lender in the first place. It was more passive. It was much easier, but also I just looked at all of the equity that I had locked away in all of these rentals and all these properties. And I thought to myself, what if I were to cash these out? And what if I were to lend those profits instead? Of course, I have to pay capital gains. And to be honest, last year's tax bill, it did suck. It stung quite a bit because we had a couple $1 million in equity in rental properties that we've acquired over the last 5 or 6 years. So, and there's another point for depreciation because we sold those properties. Now you have to pay back all that depreciation too. So it just, I don't know, it stings, but I think people need to ultimately realize what's best for them. Of course, you need to analyze the situation, say like, do I want to keep these rentals? Can I make more lending it? Or maybe you do some sort of a hybrid approach. I've heard of one lender who he actually pays off all of his rental properties and then will use a line of credit in first position. Once the properties are paid off, you can go to a bank and say, hey, I want a line of credit. typically they don't lend much. You're not going to get 80, 90%. Most of the time I've seen 60 to 65%. And that's only as long as the bank is in first lien position. And I'm not talking about big institutional banks. I'm talking about, smaller credit unions who are a little bit more flexible on their terms and the things that they can do as far as being creative. I do have a friend, he does that. So he has paid off his rental properties, gone to a credit union, put a line of credit on these properties in first lien position, and then he uses that cash to lend out as a hard money lender. So you're still getting rent checks, and it's kind of just like an ATM that you can tap into. I see why he would want to do that, because you kind of get the best of both worlds. But still, I don't like the fact that 35% of my equity is still tied up in this asset that, yes, you do control, but you don't have full access to it. I don't know. And then I also think, well, the credit unions and the banks, they still dictate the terms, where I like to have full freedom and full autonomy for everything that I want to do. So that's really it for today. Just talking about, maybe take a closer look at the assets that you have. Can you make more money just by lending that out in a more passive way too? I got to a point myself where I did not want to be a landlord anymore, and it was more headache than it was worth. And now, we did short-term rentals, we did long-term rentals, we did medium-term rentals. I don't know. Everybody just, like I said, over glamorizes everything. And it in the end, when you really get down to the nitty gritty and you run the numbers, we did okay. Like on our short-term rentals, the Airbnbs, we had one in Arizona. And then we had at one point we had 6 short-term rentals. And I think everybody thinks they're more profitable than they really are. When you take a look at the actual numbers, when you look at the nightly rate, when you look at your QuickBooks, when you look at the net income, I think a lot more people would actually make more money lending, even with the lack of depreciation, even with the ordinary income, being taxed at ordinary income. I think people think they're more profitable than they really are. So all that to say, maybe just analyze your portfolio, take a look at the equity that you have and see what you can lend that out at, and see if maybe you can make more and also have a more stress-free life. So that's it for today's episode. Again, check out our sponsor, Lender, joinlender.com, LENDR.com, and we'll catch you next week.